If you bring up any of those closets, we can talk about them in the context of today. The FAR has 52 parts, and we'll talk about things at a real high level, but at least it'll show you what the outline structure is of the FAR so you know where to find things. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about today is if you sell straight commercial items to the government. So the government has a different strategy if you're selling straight commercial items to the government, and it's a simplified acquisition process. So we'll talk about that as well. Okay? Good? All right, so proposal review. First thing to know is that there's a lot of checks and balances. Proposals are typically team efforts. When you start talking about commercial items, you might be able to put those together by yourself without a big deal. When you're talking about $500 million contracts, you obviously need more people involved. It's very integrated. So if you make a change in one place, it typically has ripple effects to all the other sections of the proposal. And where you cause yourself a problem is when you make a change in one place and you don't make it in all the other places, because then they come back to you with clarifications. What are you talking about? You say something here, you say something here. So it's very integrated. The technical volume manager, as we talked about, reviews all the work of the technical team. So the first line of defense is that the writer verifies that everything that's in their compliance matrix has been addressed. And then the technical manager reviews each section to make sure that the solution is going to work as intended, right? Because if you have a whole bunch of people off doing different parts of the technical solution, is it all going to work together? And that's what you want with the technical director. And then the tech writers review the subcontractors' work product. So if any write-ups come in from the proposal teams, from the subcontractors, you review them to make sure it's exactly what you wanted. Remember the issue I talked about before lunch? Subcontractors want to get more and more of their stuff into your solution, so they're going to write about more and more, and if you don't edit it out, they think they own that piece of work, and that's business that you thought you were going to be providing. So it's money out of your pocket and into their pocket. That's a fine decision to make if you want to make it, just be aware that you're making it, don't let the subcontractors drive you in terms of what they're going to be providing. The management volume manager, typically you don't buy anything. In the management volume, it's all about your processes, it's about your resumes of the people who are working on it, it's about your organization chart, it's about your quality assurance plan. There's not typically things you buy for that, it's all about your internal stuff that you're just explaining to the government. So in that case, you don't have to buy anything, but the management volume manager has to make sure that everything's addressed in those sections. The contracts person has their work reviewed by the head of contracts or an attorney. So basically, you just want to make sure that someone is looking at the final proposal in response to the RFP, and that you're not leaving your company open to any risk, or that you're aware of the risk you're opening yourself up to. So every contract has some element of risk, but the question is, and you know, as business leaders, you need to accept some of that risk, you need to mitigate some of that risk, you need to transfer some of that risk, or you walk away from the deal altogether because it's too risky. So those are straight business decisions that you have to make. So contracts person has their work reviewed by, if you have a head of charge. Pricing is reviewed by the CFO and maybe the CEO. A lot of CEOs get involved in pricing. One of the things that tends, and I'll tell you this from a big company perspective, there have been many times where people at this part of the organization work to build up all the prices and costs and all this other kind of stuff, and they get here, and the CEO comes in and says, yeah, come in at this price. So right away you've got a delta of the people who are actually doing the work and what they think it's going to cost, and the CEO who says, we're not going to win it if we come in at this price, so come in at this price, and we'll figure it out later. Just telling you, not the best way to run business, but it happens a lot. Proposal manager reviews the entire proposal for compliance. So they're going through and verifying that when the technical person said that they wrote to section C.1.5.4, they really wrote to section C.1.4. And then these are all the things that are happening within the proposal team. And then oftentimes companies will bring in external members of the proposal team to make sure that all the requirements are addressed and that they represent the company in the best possible way. So let me give you an example. When I worked for EDS, and I worked on my first proposal, I read quite a bit of, EDS is the best, or is a world-class systems integrator, and that was sort of our tagline. We were this world-class systems integrator, so we could bring things together. And it wasn't until, and the next proposal I worked on, I saw that. Next proposal, we always saw that on the proposals. And then I went to a small company to work on something where we were a sub to them. And lo and behold, this little 10-person engineering company was saying they were the world-class systems integrator. Now, we were saying it at EDS because we had integrated the entire Navy network. We had integrated the entire GM network. So, quite honestly, we had some proof in the pudding as to why we were able to say that, the Premier Systems Integrator. This other company had done relatively very small scale type things, and yet they were claiming the same thing we were claiming. So, government evaluators, any of us can use big words to make it sound like we run the universe, right? But the fact of the matter is, the government has to find the unique past performance that your company has that your company doesn't. So they're really trying to justify giving the contract to you, knowing that everybody's writing about the most glowing thing as possible. Because you know yourself, you can write a beautiful thing, implementing it is a whole different thing. And so just be aware that as you're writing these proposals, you've drunk the company bathwater, right? This is the way you think because you've been part of the company, just like I thought we were Premier Systems Integrators. It's when that other person comes in from the outside and says, how do you justify that? What proof do you have? Because it's much better to say you're a Premier Systems Integrator because you integrated GM's network and you integrated the Department of Navy's network. If you make that your win theme, now you've got some proof to the pudding, because they can pick up the phone and call the admiral who runs the Navy and says, is EDS involved with you in your networking? And he says yes, and you've got proof. But that smaller company wouldn't have been able to have that same proof. So it's always important to have somebody outside of the proposal team read the proposal to figure out how you're coming across. And whether or not, because your evaluator is going to be somebody outside of your proposal team, and they're going to be awarding points based on whether they think you can do what you say you're going to do. And so an outside reader or outside review teams are very helpful in performing that task. So I know this is way too big for your companies, but as you grow, and even now, you need to be thinking about reviewing all these things. Whether you have separate teams doing it, totally, you don't need separate teams doing it right now. But you do need to review your proposal for these same things. All right, so the government, let's just talk about how they're going to review your proposal. They have a team of people let's start again. The Source Selection Authority was one of those three key people we talked about in week one. You have the program manager who has the requirement, you have the contracting officer who's going to add all the contract terms and conditions, and you have the Source Selection Authority. The Source Selection Authority is going to put together a team called the Source Selection Evaluation Board, and they're all going to come together and put that source selection plan document together that documents how many points they can give you for each thing that you're able to do, or how they're going to grade you. So that's what they, as a team, bring to the table. They're going to they're the ones that when the proposals come in, they're going to split the proposals apart by functional area. So if there's a training requirement, there's going to be one person in the Source Selection Evaluation Board who is going to review all the training for everybody's proposal. Someone else is going to review all the maintenance. Someone else is going to review all the hardware components. Why would they have one person review all of those things? All training, all maintenance, as opposed to you evaluate vendor A, you evaluate vendor B. Why would they do it that way?
Because they have knowledge of the other people that they kind of already looked at.
I think it'd be kind of like to avoid the jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, you know, like if, I mean, if you read over the training or whatever, we may get that one nailed down, but just because your opinion mattered over here doesn't mean that's where you're best suited to judge another section. I mean,
So if you were professors, would you think yourself, just knowing your personality, would you tend to be an easy professor or a hard professor in grading?
it depends on the month.
Depends on the time.
Am I cranky or not? Do I not have time to throw all the papers up, whichever one's landed face up headaches?
Yes.
Right, so each of us have our own issues about how we grade. Some of us by nature, oh, I'll let that pass, yeah, that's fine. Or, by God, they did not cross that T, nor did they dot that I am marking it down. So knowing how we are as humans and how we will evaluate differently, they want to make sure that we're not biased. Because if I'm a really hard grader and I'm grading vendor A, and you're a really soft grader and you're grading vendor B, there's going to be significant disconnects, even though the proposals may be very similar, just because of the personality traits we have going on. Whereas if I'm always grading training, everybody is sort of penalized because I'm a hard grader. But everybody's benefited because he's doing all the maintenance. You see what I'm saying? So it equalizes out the evaluations. So they select the team, and then they do a responsibility check. So the government actually checks to see if you're financially suitable. There's a part of the FAR that requires responsibility, where they're checking to see if you can actually perform this work. So sometimes for like construction projects, they want to make sure you can get performance bonds. Sometimes they want to make sure you have enough access to credit if you have to do work up front before the government pays you. As small businesses, you can get paid faster than large businesses because they know you need money to meet your payroll. So, but they want to make sure that you're financially solvent. So they do a responsibility check. They may also come in and do a pre-award survey with you. What that means is they give you a checklist and they say, these are the things we're interested in. And what you do as a competent federal contractor is you put a binder together that has every single solitary item they've asked for in that binder. And when they show up in your lobby, you say, here's all the information you asked for, and they say, thank you very much, and you never see them again. That's the best way to do a site visit, a pre-award survey. What's the wrong way to do a pre-award survey? Oh, I just checked my calendar. It looks like the auditor from the government's coming here at 10 o'clock. Okay, just bring him in my office. The auditor comes in. Hi, how are you doing today? Can I help you with anything? Oh yeah, I'd like to see the items I asked for on my pre-award survey sheet. And, oh, I'm sorry, the pre-award, who did you send that to? I didn't see that. Yeah, well, tell me what you need and I'll go get it for you. So we start with item A. And while I'm looking for item A, because I'm nervous because you're my auditor, and let's face it, this is not a comfortable situation for anybody except the auditor, I just start talking, right? And as I'm talking, I'm telling them about, it's really so hard to get anything out of the contracts department. Well, guess what? I just set up an alarm in their mind for our contracts department. So my point is, do your homework, put it all in a binder, hand it to them in the lobby, and like I said, whenever I've done that, I've never seen them again, and it's the best way to go through it. Review your proposal in detail and make sure you understand all the requirements, because again, if you don't understand them and you can't do them, you have to take exception and you have to tell them what's required. Then they're going to conduct discussions to ensure that there's a meeting of the minds. So the government uses the term discussions as a replacement word for negotiations. So in the commercial space, we talk about negotiations. What the government is talking about with discussions starts as soon as they communicate with you after the proposal. Because now it's going to be confidential information. Remember, up until now, if you submitted questions to the government, what did the government do with your questions? Huh? Right, right. So they put it, they answer the question, but they publish it out to all vendors. So it's open information to everybody because of procurement integrity. But when you're conducting discussions, starting from clarifications and deficiencies onward, they are only talking to you about your proposal. They're not going to share your information with anybody else. They're now looking at the information you're giving them to make an informed decision. So your job is, so discussions start at that point, and then they go to, after they finish clarification deficiencies, and they take the competitive market and do a competitive determination, and they shrink it down to who the actual companies are that are eligible for award. You know, they might take it down to 3 or 4. Then they can determine who they're going to go into negotiations with or discussions with. And there's this items for negotiation where they will tell you these are all the things they still have as open issues to discuss with you. And then you should bring your items for negotiation of things you still want to discuss with them. Because what will happen is they'll set some amount of time that's going to be consistent for every vendor, 3 hours, and we're going to go through these discussions. You want to make sure that after they finish their items for negotiation, you can get through your items for negotiation, so that you have a meeting in mind for that. So all of that is considered discussions, which in the commercial world is negotiations. So you conduct these discussions to ensure that there's a meeting in mind. They do a careful review of your past performance. Again, those systems are getting easier with PEPRs and CPARs, where they can actually just go to a database and find out all about you with your past performance. If you don't have any government contracts, they can't take that as a negative. You are allowed to put commercial contracts in as your past performance to show that you've done this work before. And then they also can look at any publicly available information about your company. So, you know, in the middle of a proposal effort, we had a subcontractor that was part of McDonnell Douglas, and it was called Unigraphics. And the day before we were submitting the proposal, it was announced in the Wall Street Journal that EDS was purchasing Unigraphics. So EDS didn't feel any need to tell me as the program manager that we were going to be purchasing Unigraphics. So we had to ask for an extension to tell them what the issue was. But that's the situation where you have to make sure that anything that's publicly disclosed, the contracting officer has a right to use as part of their evaluation. Okay, what I mean by that is they can use that to assess your ability to perform the contract. If there's a stellar report in the Washington Post about how great you perform customer service for NIH, they can't use that to give you more points in your customer service solution. They can only evaluate what's between the covers of your proposal. But they can, if they read things in the paper that cause them to think that you're a risky solution for one reason or another, they can use that as to assign risk points to you. So you can't get pushed up because of newspaper articles, but you can get pushed up. Okay, so again, you don't have to have all these reviews because you're a small company, but these are the kinds of things you should be thinking about for the reviews. Typically, and different companies call these things different colors, but typically pink is when you're looking at marketing. How is this solution coming across to a customer? Are you coming across as arrogant, like you know it all and they're idiots? Are you coming across like you're knowledgeable and you'll be a helpful partner in this process? How are you coming across? What do you know about your competitors? Can you ghost your competitors? Do you have better quality than your competitors? Do you have a more cost-effective solution? You want to get all those kind of themes into your proposal because they're going to be evaluating what's in your proposal. The blue technical review is strictly about, will your technical solution work? And you know, if you're manufacturing the same thing day in and day out, you know it's going to work. It's all you're doing at this point is just verifying that every technical solution item has been addressed. Red team is the overall proposal. So this is somebody who's reading the proposal in total to make sure that it's compliant in every way. And your goal is, if it's a really big deal, sometimes people will actually hire paid consultants to do it. Okay, so these don't have to be 4 separate reviews. You could combine them all into one. Important thing is that you conduct the review and think about each of the review components as you do. So first thing you want to do is select several reviewers. You don't need a large group. And also just think about the timing of this. You picked people